Welcome to the Literary Onion, where today we're turning stories into food. Today we're going to be focusing on Marvel and Disney's new property, Agatha All Along. Okay, to start off with, what is stories turned into food? It's not making dishes from actual stories, like films, TV shows, like books, obvious one for stories. It's not making a dish from those stories. There's already plenty of people out there that do that. I'm not really wanting to step on any more toes. What stories turned into food is taking what I believe is the core parts of a story and turning them into what I think is an approximation of that as a dish. So you'll see that on the blog where I've done previous ones. I've turned Percy Jackson books into hot chocolate bombs. I have turned Alice in Wonderland into an afternoon tea. I've turned Nightmare Before Christmas into Christmas-themed ravioli, and onwards and so forth. You can see all of that on the blog, literaryonion.com. Thank you for the plug. This time I decided to choose Agatha All Along. I haven't actually done a Stories Turned into Food for a while, and this was going to be the first one that we videoed, which was terrifying to say the least because of how much work goes into a Stories Turned into Food, behind the scenes usually, which you'll see throughout this dish. I chose Agatha All Along mostly because I saw the D23 show, or song, and it really gave me the vibes of autumn. I haven't done an autumn-themed dish before. It seemed really fun. And then I saw the first two episodes, and the first two episodes I adored, and it made me really want to do a dish based on Agatha All Along. I decided by episode 3 what that dish was going to be. I always knew the dish was going to be based on a soup. Nothing more autumnal than a soup, and gave the vibes of witches' potions and things to go into soup as well. However, episode 3 was what cemented what that dish was going to be. Originally, it was going to be a soup that you poured on top of some solids to make the dish one. It was the third episode that made me decide, no, we're going to do something different. We're going to follow the third episode. One part of the dish is going to be themed around the Witch's Road, and one part of the dish is going to be a drink version of a soup. And the key difference was that, like episode 3, I wanted to make one part of the dish, the Witch's Road, poison, the wine that they drink in the third episode, and the other part of the dish, I wanted to make the antidote for that potion. And so you'll see that a lot as we go through the dish. Now, I could carry on forever and talk about it forever, but what we're going to do is we're going to break it down part by part. You can see the drawing behind, which shows the final dish when I was drawing it. We're going to go through part by part, and I'm going to tell you how the dish was made, but also why I used that for the dish. And that includes why I used it in reference to Agatha, and why I used it in reference to making a complete dish and not a disjointed dish. So I hope you'll follow me down the road. Can't sing the song because of copyright. And let's go and have some fun on the Witch's Road, I guess. Braised red cabbage and beetroot puree. Okay, the red cabbage portion of this was actually a main part of the dish from the beginning. I thought it would give the purple vibes for Agatha, and also it would feature the red wine from the poison. That was happenstance. I actually came up with that before I came up with the poison thing. I wanted it to be a puree for the texture being creamy, and I wanted it to have some body to hold its shape to create some height on the dish, which is why I ended up adding beetroot to it. You can see the red wine going in here. It also is reminiscent of like a witch's cauldron and adding more ingredients and making a stew type thing. So it gives witchy vibes, as well as the fact you're adding, we added spices to it, nutmeg, cumin, cinnamon. We added herbs to it, like bay leaf and thyme. All things that you would find traditionally in things that are designed as winter dishes, you know? They're also witch vibes with bay leaves, and originally the dish was meant to include sage. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a hold of sage. That would have had more witchy, ghosty connotations. Unfortunately, it just wasn't possible. However, what we did create was something really tasty, so I'm not entirely bothered by the fact I couldn't do certain things that I wanted to do. Red onion was added to this, partially because I needed to use up red onions. I had plenty of red onions in, and also because it just added a sweetness and a base layer instead of regular onion. So we still got that purple vibe and we didn't lose any of that purple with other things. That's tomato paste going in that adds some body to the actual puree. For the actual recipe for braised red cabbage, like I do with most things, I found a recipe online. I found a few recipes online actually, and then I tweaked them to how I wanted the dish to be. I wanted it to heavily feature that red wine, so I increased red wine, made sure I added red wine vinegar in order to keep that like red wine taste going throughout. And then it was put into an Instant Pot. This was the first time we'd ever used our Instant Pot. We were terrified. The beetroot was added much later, so we didn't, because it was already cooked, so we didn't need to cook it too long. And then at the end, we just carried on cooking the beetroot for another 5 minutes or so in the Instant Pot. We pureed it, and that was it. That was the... Oh, that's unfair actually. No, we left the braised cabbage in the fridge to sit for 2 days in the fridge in order to make that braised cabbage flavour go stronger. The longer you leave braised cabbage, the stronger that flavour gets. So we left it for 2 days, then we pureed it, and by that point it was ready for the dish. So all that work was done. We just put it into a bowl and had it ready to go for when we next had the dish. Cursed caramelized pumpkin pieces. Okay, there's a simple reason to use pumpkin. Pumpkin screams Halloween. Pumpkin adds colour to the dish, which is otherwise a very dark dish. It adds sweet earthiness. We wanted to go with the earthy autumn vibes. I just roasted them simply with some oil, some salt and pepper, because the magic of the pumpkin comes later. And I'm saying magic because I want to reference witchcraft, because why not? It's my video. However, what I really wanted to do on the edge of the roasted pumpkin was to create black spots. I wanted to represent Darkhold users using the Darkhold. Agatha, Wanda all have black on their hands, and so I torched the pumpkin after roasting it in order to get those black marks on the outside. Then what I did, before I put it on the final dish, just made a simple caramel with sugar, bit of water, some ginger for some fieriness, some chili flakes to create more fieriness to represent the fire in the show. Agatha uses fire references to Salem witch trials and Lorna Wu's death and fire in the song room in episode 4, everything related to fire. And so I wanted to create fire on my pumpkin pieces to add that heat to the dish, to add some spiciness to the dish, just to bring it alive a bit, ironically, to do with fire. But they're really tasty, not need too much, but they're very simple to make. Sweet and sour poison berry coulis. We feature the poison again in the coulis, which is the base of the plate. This represents the Witch's Road on the plate. Literally metaphor for the fact that Witch's Road is poisonous for the people walking along it. How many people are we going to see die by the end? I don't know. This is a very simple thing to make. It's just some raspberries, frozen raspberries, not too many, some wine, the poison again, some blackcurrant and blackberry syrup. I couldn't get fresh blackberries, unfortunately. They were too much money for the amount I needed. And then some balsamic vinegar, just to add some sweet and sour vibes to the dish. Add the fruitiness we really wanted, originally from fresh blackberries, but again, we couldn't get them. And to create that base black road for the Witch's Road. And to add more poison to the dish, of course. So it's very simple. Put it in a pan, then just reduce it until you get to the thickness you want to be able to spread it along the plate for your base road, but also not too thick that you can't spread it. So you can see here that it reduced for about, I want to say, maybe 15-20 minutes. It's not too long. You're just mostly waiting around for it to do. Unfortunately, I was watching something else at the time, so I actually over-reduced it. So when I needed it the next day, what I did was a quick fix if you really want to know how to do it. Just put it in a bowl, microwave-proof bowl, add some more water to it, not too much, mix it around, microwave it, stir it back up again, and when it cools down, you should have the right consistency for the coulis. It's an easy mistake to make, and it's easy to fix. So I wouldn't worry too much if you do make it and do that. Linseed Blackheart Cracker. I knew from the very beginning that I wanted to add the black heart on. It's a strong part of the actual dish as well as the actual show, in that we still don't entirely know which person is Blackheart. There's so many options. Mrs. Hart, Rio, Teen/Billy, so many of them could be Blackheart now. I'm sure eventually we might find out which one actually was meant to be Blackheart. But I decided to use linseed crackers. I haven't done them for years. They're a recipe from Tommy Banks, a chef in the UK that I luckily ate dinner at years ago now, and I decided to come home and make them. It's really, really simple to do. You just get linseeds, salt, water, that's the only ingredients in it. I should point hot water from a kettle, and then you wait, and then you spread it out, and you put them in the oven on a low temperature, and wait for them to turn into crackers, essentially, which you then break up. I couldn't get them to a heart shape, it was not happening, and I just broke them into pieces like I would normally and put them on the dish, which kind of helped to create a woody effect, so it kind of benefited it. And they also not only add the texture that you want to the dish, the crispness, everything else is quite wet, and they also add height to the dish. And height is an important thing when you're thinking about how to make a dish. You can see I absolutely messed up while making these. I put too much on the mat. Just make half the quantity. You don't need the quantity I tried to make. I actually ended up making them again the next day because they don't last overnight. That's another thing with linseed crackers. You have to make them on the day you're going to use them because they go softer the longer you leave them. You can see here they're really crispy. They go soft longer. So these are the ones I made on the day that I needed them. We're on to the boring part now, guys. I say boring because this is where I do all the prep before I get to the final dish. Now I decided this would be a veg heavy dish because I wanted to replicate the woods. Woods are mainly known for vegetation, even though there is fauna in there as well. You can see a special method here where I'm trying to make spring onion trees. I had spring onions to use up in the fridge. This is a technique I actually learned at a restaurant I worked at, where you put the spring onions slightly slit down the side into a glass of water, and what they do is they slowly unfurl. So I was going to use that to make some trees, which will be featured on the next part. The rest of the dish, heavily on carrots, mushrooms, earthiness, onion, some garlic, herbs. This is all prep, and then what you can do with prep is anything that's going to be cooked in the same pan at the same time, you can do what I did here, which is put them into the pile that they belong in. And that's organisation. So it's a boring part, but it's a necessary part. It's just a lot easier for the dish to do this in advance. The magic of mise en place. The deep fried spring onion trees that I mentioned in the last part. Okay, so the spring onions were things I added last minute. I had tons of spring onions to use up in the fridge from previous dinners. If you can see the actual effect of putting them in the water here. They unfurled the branches of the trees. What I was going to do with the trees was I was going to make a crispy element. So I was going to deep fry them in a simple thing of flour and some paprika and some salt. It really is as fancy as that. Just mix them into that and then deep fry them on about 190 until they're just crispy enough. Drain them on kitchen paper, and then they add a crispiness to the dish again to help the black hearts out. It is a very wet dish otherwise, and also to create the height again that we wanted, as well as looking like trees for our forest floor. I should point out we also deep fried some wild mushrooms, but they were disgusting, so we decided not to put them on the plate. Love them or hate them, it's garlic Marmite mushroom time. These are very, very simple. It's just garlic, mushrooms essentially, with some herbs and the spring onion, which I added Marmite to because the dish was really missing some umami / meatiness flavour otherwise. It helped to balance out the dish. It added mushrooms to the woods. That was the whole point of them. It's as simple as that. Lime pickled red onion. Nothing more simple, just one lime squeezed over thinly sliced red onion with some salt, and this was to add the purple colour again, but also to provide a zing to the plate. Specifically a citrus zing, as we'll go on to another type of zing on the next part. Honey pickled apple leaves and carrots as well. So these were meant to represent leaves falling on a forest floor, specifically in autumn, which is when the dish is set, and also in Agatha All Along there's leaves all over the floor as well. But it's also meant to represent an apple falling off a tree in autumn as well, and that's why I use cider vinegar for the vinegar to create more of an apple flavour. Honey comes from bees naturally, bees also exist in woods, and then what I made sure to do was I used a peeler to shape the apple into long leaf shapes. Are they exact leaves? No, they're not meant to be. They're just meant to represent the falling leaves onto the plate. What I also added to the dish last minute, because I needed to use up some old carrots, was some carrot ribbons. So the carrot ribbons were a bit soft, so what I did, I left them overnight in some cold water in the fridge, and that helped to crisp them up again, the ribbons that I'd prepared earlier in the video. I then added them to the same pickling mix as the apple did, and I just let them sit for around half an hour. You don't want it to be a full-on pickle, so don't leave it around too long. Bit of salt, the vinegar, the honey that's been heated up in the microwave for about 30 seconds, just until it's homogenised basically. Then just let them sit until you're ready to put them on the dish. Herbie cream. So I splashed out on this one and I used a Signy cream. It's a French cream, actually not too badly priced in France, I was surprised. It's mainly used because it has more body. You can even see it on here. Compared to regular cream, it's already quite thick, it's already really creamy. It's actually very nice if you can get hold of some. And all I did with it is simply mix in some herbs and some chopped spring onion that I'd done the day before I started plating the dish. Very simple to do. It's a very good addition. It creates a pop of colour on the dish. It adds some creaminess and more body to the dish, and just some balance against some otherwise very strong flavours. So some salt and pepper, because salt and pepper is important in every element of the dish you're making. Ingredients, assemble. One of the best parts of making this a salad type dish is I could prep it all in advance, all in bowls, ready and easy for me to plate it as soon as I needed to. I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. Now please enjoy a music-filled compilation of me plating this dish. Finally, it's time to plate. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything. All it takes is some time and some clarity to find your identity. It's mind over everything. I'm immortal. When I feel like this, I'm immortal. When I feel like this, I'm immortal. When I feel like this, I'm immortal. Don't be scared. Just level up, don't be scared. And there we have it, our witch's road. Down, down, down the road we go, but oh no, it's poisonous. What do we do after we've eaten it? Quick, we need an antidote! Consomme. Now we've got our poison, we need our potion. And so this dish was predominantly inspired by episode 3. It started out as a base layer of onions and 1 carrot, predominantly onion, because I wanted it to be French onion soup vibes, because that's my favourite soup in autumn and it matches the dish perfectly. The rest of the ingredients were actually ingredients that were either exact copies or approximations of the ingredients used in the antidote in episode 3. So we had mustard seed, we had honey, we had frankincense in the sense we had lemongrass powder, bay leaf and thyme to represent the fragrant side of frankincense. Petroleum jelly was a jellified veg stock pot, because that's as close as I could get to not ruin the dish. And hair was finely chopped green parts of spring onion, which, as we learned later, actually has keratin found in hair, which, you know, was not what we went for. We were just going for the stringiness of hair, but you know, we'll take a win, we'll take a win. It was cooked for half an hour, ironically the same amount of time as the trials on the actual show. But actually we put it on for 5 more minutes, so it's not as good as we wanted it to be. But then we took the stock, we put it in the fridge, similar as we did with braised cabbage. We left it for a couple of days to intensify the flavour before we ended up doing, as you see on the screen here, putting it through a sieve so we could get the liquid out. And you can see how cloudy and foggy the actual stock is. We didn't want to leave it like that, so we added some salt to flavour the stock, and then we were going to make a consommé. Now, consommé is just a fancy French term for clarifying, as in making it really nice and like opaque and shiny. The actual stock. The flavour pretty much remains the same. This is just a mixture of carrot, onion, celery, some miso paste, some tomato paste. There's some herbs in there that I put in there, and egg whites, which is a really big important one in consommé. You just let it sit on the hob for around 45 minutes it takes. You don't want to boil it, so you're trying to get it up to a simmer, and then you'd leave it again for another hour and a half while poking a hole in it every now and again, because what you want to do is be able to see underneath it to see how it's doing. And you can see the crust that forms on the top. This is all mainly from the egg white floating to the top. The miso paste was added as well to create some more umami flavour in the French onion soup. You can see now how it's starting to actually look a bit shinier, and this is at the end of the process. This is after an hour and a half of cooking, and I put it through now with a ladle, the sieve again, but this time with some kitchen roll in it to catch any of the sediment. The kitchen roll is chemical free, so it's safe for cooking. It went in. You can see now how clear the liquid is. It's amber. It's like genuinely beautiful. You can see even better by eye. And I'm showing you here, what I'm trying to show you here with the spoon is just how clear it is now. And you compare that to the cloudiness of before, it's miles apart. This was the finishing part. We drank this hot, whereas the salad dish is cold, so mix and match. And then what we did was we added blood. It's not real blood, it's just some braised cabbage liquor from earlier. And please don't do this with knives, like, it was just to represent the unpoisoned blood. Overall, I'm really, really proud of this dish. I'm proud of most of the stories turned into food, but this one turned out exceptionally well. It was really tasty, even if it might look a bit of a mess on the plate from different angles. The French onion consommé was amazing. Generally one of my favourite things I've ever made, and I hope you enjoy watching. And what story do you think we should make next?